I should start by correcting the record a little bit. I spent most of my career as a staff writer at the LA Times, 8 years, and I left in early 2008. I was fortunate in that I left very much of my own will. Many of my colleagues, for reasons I never understood, people who were more, certainly in almost all cases, more experienced than I, more contacts, better journalists in many ways, were asked to leave. I chose to go a sort of more freelance route. Now I'm not a freelancer. I'm at least right now. As you normally think of it, New American Foundation is a think tank based in D.C., run by a journalist, Steve Call of the New Yorker magazine, and that. So I have not a salary, we call it a stipend. I have better health care and retirement benefits than I ever did as an employee of the LA Times, Wall Street Journal, or Baltimore Sun. So I am extraordinarily fortunate. But I'm also a temporary employee of this think tank. I'm there on a fellowship that lasts just 2 years and ends next spring. So then I have to figure out what I do next. I'm inclined to go in the freelance direction. It's a wonderful gig. They just want me to write about California, what I write about. I'm not told what to do. There's no party line. There's no doctrine. They just want me to write stories, be published in high-impact places, and stories that are good. Yes, again, very fortunate. Now to this question of where we're at, because I come out of the mainstream media, and it's a family disease. I'm married to a reporter at the Wall Street Journal. My father has been a reporter at the Washington Post for 58 years since he retired shortly after he returned from Vietnam. And my mother's been a newspaper reporter and editor her entire career. I'm currently as an editor at USA Today. My grandparents both worked in corners of this business, including for a grandfather who worked for a publication called the Munger Oilgram, which monitored the take of the wells in Signal Hill. I'm just a partisan of it. I don't think there's anything that's going to replace what sort of mainstream organizations did, the gathering and checking they did. And even at their best and their most robust, they didn't do nearly enough of this. Not necessarily because they didn't have the resources of the people, but just because human beings are lazy, human institutions are disorganized, and there are few enterprises more disorganized than a journalistic one. So I have no illusions that the newspapers got everything or were fair or did all the checking, nearly close to the checking they should have been doing. But they were doing a lot of it, and I don't believe anyone's replacing it. I haven't seen, when I go to the courthouse to look up records, I don't run into many bloggers. All this, when I go to legislative hearing, I don't run into many bloggers. The bloggers I do run into are almost invariably tied to some mainstream journalistic organization. So I think you're going to get less checking. And I think you're seeing this phenomenon. It predates the Great Recession or whatever we're calling it over now, and some of the deeper cutbacks of the recent years. You saw a lot of these journalistic organizations, which were owned by public companies, both have been cutting for years. I started out as a reporter, 22 years old, at the Baltimore Sun, and 2 months in 1995, and 2 months in, there was a big bloodletting, and I think for all 14 years I was in a mainstream news organization, there might have been 1 year where there wasn't a sort of a cutback at whatever place I was working. Here's my sort of take on, everyone talks about the business model, it's this crisis of the business model, but really it's an ethical crisis. I think when I worked for a newspaper, I believed, and I think I was correct in believing, that I worked for readers. The readers were really the people paying my salary. Now, of course, there are advertisers in the intermediary, but advertisers were buying an audience of readers. So I felt that that was very clear. Now, people talk about new models and nonprofits and, you know, places like ProPublica or even the New America Foundation, you know, that are going to, you know, be great. And, I mean, everyone, it seems like everybody, Annenberg at SC, the Kaiser Health News has a nonprofit organization. But I don't trust the nonprofit model, to be honest with you. And I speak that as someone who's in it. Those, you know, you're not working for readers in a nonprofit. You're working for whoever your funders are. And that's a much more, and those funders almost always have an agenda that is much more specific and targeted than that of the broad readers I used to write for. So I'm not completely sold on that. I mean, I think the other problem and the other reason with the other sort of big strategic mistake that mainstream media has made, and I'll just conclude with this thought, has been to sort of, you know, get down there in the muck with the crazies, to try to you know, sort of fully embrace the internet, to you know, sort of do blogging, do more stuff quicker, that's less reliable and less accurate ultimately. I mean, that's the direction everything is going, and the mainstream media has sort of debased itself by doing more and more of that. I would argue for an alternative, an alternative of, and I think where there's great competitive advantage if you use your resources right and you hire smart people, is to, the cause of mainstream media should not be, you know, getting down in the gutter with everyone else. It should be, you know, we're going to be more ethical than we've ever been. We're going to be more accurate than we've ever been. And we should be, you know, I mean, say we, even though I'm not one of them anymore, we should, you know, be talking about how you make the paper more reliable and more accurate. And I think that actually, you know, calls for a raising up of ethics. I mean, I think it may involve, you know, pre-publication peer review of stories like we have in the best academic and scientific journals. I think it calls for, I mean, I've as a reporter, I did this, though certainly not all the time, often because time got in the way. But I think we should I think, you know, in terms of a sort of peer review model, I think we should be showing, I used to read stories back to people, I was writing about people in the stories, read quotes back, read stories back. I think that should be the standard for anything. I think we should be saying to people, you know, for, you know, these mainstream publications, you know, anything you're getting fast and quick off the internet is trash. That's, you know, that's the worst of McDonald's. That's fast food. You want to eat that crap? Fine. But if you come to us, where we're asking you to pay, we're going to give you stuff that actually is nourishing and accurate and reliable. And that is where I would want folks to draw the line. Let me stop there.
Thank you very much, Joe and Ron. I want you to jump on that, but in the same token, I want you to add the question before you is, you did this. You did the research. You were the guy out there beating the bushes and getting the stories out, and lo and behold, you were out yourself. You bring up the level that he's talking about. Does the consumer care? The reader consumer care? Your thoughts?
Okay, thanks. Actually, I'm the journalist in the gutter. He's putting down, putting out all that trash that nobody ought to read.
I know. I mean, I'm one of them now too.
I would like to jump in right now.